He hasn't played at Texas A&M since 2013, but Johnny Football has the Aggies back in national headlines.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in the Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. We're going to break down this Johnny Manziel doc, Untold, Johnny Football, which premiered on Netflix here recently. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was telling. I thought there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know about Johnny Manziel and his story and what led to the decisions he made. But first, we're going to, praise Johnny Football for what he did for Texas A&M. Texas A&M left the Big 12 as just a middle-of-the-road Big 12 team to join the SEC. They talked about this in the doc. The word on the street was that Texas A&M could not compete in the SEC and that they were going to be the laughingstock. Everybody thought this was what was going to happen, but not Johnny Football. Johnny Football came out of nowhere from Kerrville, Texas, and says, watch this, and puts Texas A&M on the map. First freshman to win the Heisman Trophy, leads the Aggies to a great season, leads the Aggies to an okay season in the following year, and really put Texas A&M on the map, made the university millions and millions and millions of dollars. And that is where things started to go sideways for the talented quarterback. Manziel and one of his best friend was kind of acting as his manager. And what they were doing is signing autographs and bringing in lots and lots and lots of money. That money is how he was paying for courtside tickets and how he was paying for private jet flights and how he was paying for all this alcohol. Folks, goodness gracious, he was partying like you would never believe with these famous people. That was one of the things I found to be so funny was like, oh, look at this. There's this picture with Johnny Football and famous person, and all these, A-list celebrities. And you're just like, wow, those are some famous people Johnny Football is partying with. But there was an NCAA investigation. He ended up only getting a half-game suspension thanks to them being smartly covering it up. So, he made it very clear in his talking about his, A&M career, football career. He made it very clear that the Heisman is what kind of set him over the top of, he is this, he was big-time famous. He was everything. And he was the college football player, and he let it get to his head. He had all this money from signing autographs, which, of course, is not allowed by the NCAA, which, because that was before NIL and all that. So, all this happened, and he started to just spiral and make worse and worse decisions. And then, of course, he is drafted to the Cleveland Browns after his time at Texas A&M. He made it very clear that he hated it in Cleveland. His career obviously did not go well. And then I think to get to the interesting part now, so that's kind of how this all went down. Talked about he's lost by that time he had lost his connection with his family. Him and his dad weren't talking. He wasn't talking to his best friend after the NFL draft process because he hired an agent and got rid of his best friend as kind of his manager agent. So, he didn't really have anybody in his corner. It seemed like besides money and partying. And, this is where I was curious. This got weird to me. In the middle of the doc, they just kind of say, yeah, and I was diagnosed bipolar. Bipolar is a very, serious condition that you have to have help. You have to have and I'm no medical professional, but you have to get therapy and get medicine to help you. It's a disease. It's a problem, and you have to get help, and that's okay. But Johnny Manziel wasn't diagnosed till later in life. And, one thing they didn't talk about, now they talked about all the horrible decisions he made, all the silly things he did, the dressing up as Scooby-Doo and then playing a football game the next day and beating a ranked Mississippi State team. I mean, it's really amazing that he was able to do some of these things he did on the football field with that much alcohol in the system. But I don't think they did their due diligence explaining the mental health side of things for him. What I would have loved to have heard, this would have sold it for me, folks. If they would have had a medical professional, interview and say, listen, Johnny football, a lot of the silly things he did, the poor decisions he made were in thanks to this bipolar. Maybe that's not the case, but I don't know. We don't know. I wish they would have told us that, had a medical professional come on and talk about it, because we love Johnny Manziel. He put Texas A&M on the map. He made the university millions and millions of dollars, made this a team that is in a position it is right now. None of this is possible without Johnny Manziel. I feel very confident saying that. And I just don't think they did a good enough job explaining the mental health side of things. And actually, Ryan Leaf talked about that, the former number. It's funny because Johnny Manziel and Ryan Leaf share a little bit because they're both, big time NFL draft busts. But this is what the former number 2 overall pick had to say about Johnny Manziel. He said, the documentary entirely overlooked presenting a positive direction for Johnny's mental health struggles. I think that's a great way to talk about it. I was just on the phone with a buddy. I called everybody that's seen this just to get opinions and see what everybody thought before, collecting my thoughts to be able to discuss this here on Locked On Aggies. And my friend Carson, talked about, he said, and we agreed, we didn't like the way that they didn't give a great update on where Johnny's doing now. Okay. So, to preface that, the kind of end of what went wrong with him, he was out of the NFL. He made the awful decision. He went to Vegas. He realized he had a game. He was trying to wear a disguise. It didn't work. He tried to get back to Cleveland for the football game. He couldn't get a ticket. And then he eventually said, whatever, don't care. I'm having myself a night. Got released. And that was it. That was the end of the Johnny football story. And he said that he said, I'm going to take $5 million. I'm going to go absolutely crazy, party, have an awesome time. And then he planned to take his own life. He purchased a firearm to do so. He said that he did it. He spent his $5 million. He partied his tail off. And then that was it. He was going to pull the trigger and take his own life. He said the gun clicked on him. And that is why he's still here today. And thankfully so, because Johnny Manziel, aside from all the struggles and the issues he's had, he seems like underneath those horrible decisions and underneath that bipolar is a person who just wants to be better, and a person who signs autographs for kids, puts small. Maybe that's just me that feels that way, but I feel that Johnny Manziel, was overruled by his mental health struggles. And I think that the real Johnny Manziel underneath all that is a good person. And we never really got to see it because of the horrible decisions he made while struggling with all of those mental health situations. But I didn't like that they didn't give an update on how he's doing now. The only real update they gave was that, he hadn't been talking to his father when everything had gone, stuff hit the fan. He went home and said, and talked to his pops, and they've now reconnected, and Johnny seems to be doing better. But I wish they would have given 10 minutes of explaining, I'm receiving this help. I'm doing okay. This is how I think they could have done a little bit better with that, because that's what I want to hear. That's what Texas A&M fans want to hear. I want to know Johnny's okay. I want to know that Johnny is okay. He's doing better. There's no coming back. There's no more NFL football career for him. I think we all know that. But it's like, I just want to know that he's doing okay. And I think they could have done a better job explaining that than they did. Like I said, really all they did was talk about how he's back with his pops. So I think they could have done a better job there. But, and this was actually something another friend I talked to, he brought up an interesting point. And this could, this is just a random thought, but, Johnny talked about how much he hated it in Cleveland. And he also talked about how when Dallas was on the clock at his draft, what he was, kind of looking forward to playing potentially for the Cowboys. And it makes me wonder if he would have gone to a Texas team, if he would have gone to the Houstons. Of course, they took Jadeveon Clowney, and then the Dallas Cowboys took Zach Martin. If he would have gone to one of the Texas teams and kind of got to stay at home, would things have gone better for him in the NFL? Now, I don't think now, hear me out. I don't think playing at home, this was another note here. He didn't watch a second of film during his time in Cleveland. How long would he have lasted in Houston or in Dallas if he didn't watch film? Probably not much. I don't know. But it'd be interesting to know if he was around the Aggie faithful and friends and family and everybody was there. Like, would things have been a bit better for him? That's just one thought I had. I have no idea. That's just a thought that I had. I have no idea if any of that, is accurate or not. But, and the stories are fun. I mean, like it's funny hearing about him dressed as Scooby-Doo, drinking a whole bunch of beers, and then going and playing a great football game and winning a big one against a ranked football team. I mean, it's funny stories, but that's not how your quarterback should act. I mean, I think we can all agree there. But and then like the tweet he sent out before the Alabama matchup, I mean, that was incredible. I mean, and I read this and they talked about it. It's like that's when he went from a really good college football quarterback for the Texas A&M Aggies to Johnny freaking football. That's when that transition happened. Then, of course, he goes on to win the Heisman, and that's when stuff went sideways. So that's what I would want to know. Those are the two things I would have done a little bit differently. Is how's Johnny doing now? A genuine update. Is he feeling better? Mental health. How's he doing? What's he up to? What's he been doing? I want to know all that. And then also I'd like to know, I would have loved to have heard a medical professional come on. And that's another person I talked to. My roommate is a neurology student, a medical school student studying neurology. And he discussed that. He said, I think a lot of what he did had to do with bipolar. I mean, I think with bipolar disorder, I think a lot of that had to do with is what, my roommate said. And we watched the doc together actually. And, he's told me that today as he was leaving for medical school. And I thought, it's a good point. I wish they would have brought on a doctor, a medical professional to discuss that knows Johnny and knows what he's been going through and to kind of explain that. I think that would have been really interesting. I wish they would have done that, but folks, it's a great doc. Go give it a watch if you haven't on Netflix. It's interesting. And let me know in the comments, what would you wish they would have done differently? What did you like about it? What was a shock to you? What was surprising? Let me know in the YouTube comments everything that you thought about the doc. It was a fun watch. And like I say, I just hope Johnny's doing okay. And thank you, Johnny Manziel. Thank you, Johnny Football, for all you did for Texas A&M. We wouldn't be here without you today. So thank you so much for everything. And I hope you're doing good, buddy. I really do. So go check it out. Let me know, folks, in the comments what you think about the doc. Untold, Johnny Football. We're going to answer a few mailbag questions. I got some fun ones. I'm going to make the case for a couple starting quarterbacks, and I'm going to make the case for who could be 3 all-SEC players for the Texas A&M Aggies in 2023. We're going to talk about all that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to talk about our friends over at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to my garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions do apply. Mailbag time, ladies and gentlemen. I always love answering your questions here on Locked On Aggies. It's a fun thing, and it's great topics that you all bring to me. So the first is I was asked, this was actually all 3 of these were direct messages to the show's Twitter. If you don't follow the show's Twitter, head over there and follow it at Locked On Aggies. I've been posting my shows there on a day-to-day basis, some fun stuff, so go check that out. But the first question is, make the case for Max Johnson and make the case for Connor Weigman. I think that the case for Max Johnson has to do with experience. Experience is the name of the game here. He's been around longer. He's played in the SEC. He's had multiple stops in the SEC. He's a guy that I think has a floor that can win you football games, a game manager type of guy. I think last year he looked okay. He looked not okay. I think he looked good at times. And, people in the comments have let me know that we have a lot of Max Johnson fans, folks. Now we have a lot of Connor Weigman lovers as well, but we have some Max Johnson fans. So I think that he throws a crisp football. I think he's got experience. I think that could lead to wins for the Aggies on the football field. And one thing I want to talk about, I talked about this on the radio yesterday, was I think if Max Johnson is the starter and Connor Weigman is your backup, I think you have one of the best backups in college football in Connor Weigman. If Connor Weigman's the starter and Max Johnson is the backup, same thing. I think you have one of the best backups in college football in Max Johnson in that case. So whichever way this works out, I think it's going to go well for Texas A&M. But and in the case for Weigman, I think it has to do more with his athleticism and his upside. The former 5-star, fast, can use his legs. I think you're going to see that a lot more this year. I think you're going to see him take off a lot more this year. We saw that in the spring game. And he's quick, he's athletic, he can do it. So it'll be interesting to see how much he uses his legs, how much Coach Petrino wants him to use his legs, how they're going to kind of handle all that. So that'll all be interesting. But I think Connor Weigman wins the job, folks. I think he's going to do a great job this season for the Aggies. And I think, you want the floor play, throw Max Johnson out there. You want the ceiling play, throw Connor Weigman out there. And I think Connor Weigman's ceiling is like, if this is the roof and then this is Mars, his ceiling is like here. That's how high his ceiling is. Come to Locked On Aggies, folks, for cringy hand gestures and sayings. We have them here for you all episode long. But I think Connor Weigman is going to have a great season. I think he's going to turn some heads. I think he's going to finish the year as a shocker, as one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC that not a lot of people are kind of imagining right now. But watch out for Connor Weigman this year. But folks, like I said, this still is a battle, and we'll see how it pans out. I think Weigman wins the job, and I think he's going to be an absolute dog for the Aggies. But Max Johnson, whether he's the starter, whether he's the backup, is a good quarterback and is going to help out this Texas A&M football team. The next question here is predict 3 players to be all SEC. So 2 in the secondary, and I have a receiver here. Before I say who those are, I'm going to tell you why I do not have a defensive lineman, why I don't have a defensive lineman in this group. And there's one simple reason. I think there are so many defensive linemen that are going to get snaps, that are going to do good things for the Aggies this season, that it's going to be hard for one of them to really separate themselves. Now, is that the end-all be-all? No. I still think that I'm willing to bet that one of them sneaks onto an all-SEC list, but I had to pick 3 players, and I feel very good about Evan Stewart, Demani Richardson, and Tyreek Chappell being on all-SEC lists this year for the Aggies. I think Demani and Tyreek are going to have great seasons, and I think Evan Stewart is going to have the year. We're going to talk a little bit more about Evan Stewart coming up here. We're going to talk about, is there anything that could hold him back from being a top 10 wide receiver in college football? We're going to talk about that in segment 3 here today on Locked On Aggies. But those are the 3 guys. I think that Tyreek on the outside and Demani playing safety are in for great seasons. I think that they're going to make it really hard to throw the football against the Aggies. And if I'm an opposing team trying to throw the football against Texas A&M, watch out for these 2 guys. I still think Evan Stewart is going to be a guy that makes an all-SEC list. We're going to talk about a little bit more about him, like I said, in a little bit, but I'm really excited for sophomore season, Evan Stewart. I think he is in for a colossal, monster, massive explosion into the college football world, more than we even really thought possible, because of just purely how stinking good he is at football. So those are my 3 guys that I'm predicting right now. If you think somebody different, let me know in the comments. Who do you all predict to be all SEC? Now, there's more than 3. They asked me 3, so I gave 3. I think that you're going to see more than 3 Aggies on all SEC lists. So let me know who on this 2023 Texas A&M roster is going to make an all SEC team. The last question on our mailbag before we're going to get into segment 3, talking a little bit about Evan Stewart, is from fall camp thus far, who are my MVPs on offense and defense? I've talked a lot about these guys, but I have to just go Noah Thomas on offense, Javon Thomas on defense. Javon Thomas comes in as a true freshman and has been absolutely turning heads. I think he could fight for a starting spot. And it's funny, both of these guys have given each other respect. Both of them, the Thomases, are impressed with what each other's been doing. But the hype train is building around Noah Thomas and what he's going to do for the Aggies this season. Javon Thomas is a guy that I've heard is fighting with Sam McCall, Josh DeBerry, and Tony Grimes for a starting corner spot. So those two guys are my MVPs from fall so far. Now, it's still early in the fall. We're barely a week into it. So, that could change. I'll probably discuss this more, who's going to be the MVPs going forward. We'll talk more about that as fall camp continues. But those two guys a little bit more than a week in, have really stood out and have done a lot of positives for their 2023 outlooks for playing time, snaps, and what they're going to do for the Aggies on the field this season. Will Evan Stewart separate himself from the pack being Moose, Noah Thomas, and Ainias Smith, in catches, touchdowns, yards? Or is he going to be kind of held back by how talented the room is? We're going to discuss that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. Evan Stewart, talked a little bit about him. He's my all-SEC pick. But will he be held back by Noah Thomas, Ainias Smith, and Moose Muhammed? Now, when I say held back, I mean held back. He's still going to be awesome. When I say held back, I more mean, is he kind of going to be capped a little bit? If Evan Stewart was playing at I don't know, Vandy, that's easy. If he's playing at Vandy, he's going to be an all-SEC performer. Now, I think quarterback play would hold you back in that situation, but you're the guy. At Texas A&M, you have these receivers, Noah Thomas, Ainias Smith, Moose Muhammed, that are going to make it hard for Evan Stewart to utterly dominate. Is he going to get to 1,000 yards? Is he going to get to double-digit touchdowns? It'll be interesting to see if he's able to do that. I think he's going to have a good season, but I think you could see a difference in good season to monster season, and it won't even really be his fault. I think it's going to have more to do with the fact that frankly, that he is playing with some really good wide receivers that have been here and played before. It'll be interesting to see how Coach Petrino's offense is going to kind of work. Is it going to be are they going to spread the ball to a lot of guys? Is there going to be anybody that gets more reps than anybody else? You can't have everybody on the field. You can't throw the football to 4 people every single play. So some people are going to get more targets and receptions and yards and touchdowns than others. So it'll be interesting to see who on this Texas A&M wide receiver room that is. So I'm going to answer this question and say, yes, I think Evan Stewart is going to get held back. And when I say held back, I mean, I think that his numbers are going to be a little less than you would imagine because of the talent in this room. I still think he's going to have a year where when it's all said and done, we look at him as a top 10 wide receiver in college football. But you have to remember, it's kind of like if you have, in the NFL, like if you had a team. Okay, here's a great point. When there was talks of DeAndre Hopkins signing with the Bills, of course he signed with the Tennessee Titans, but there was talks of him signing with the Bills. Does that hurt Stephon Diggs? Heck yes, it does. Heck yes, bringing in D-Hop hurts Stephon Diggs. And I think you're going to kind of see a situation similar to that with Evan Stewart. I think having all of these good wide receivers playing alongside him is going to lead to him not kind of having the year that, like, him not having that monster explosion year. I think he could have a big year. I think it's a difference in potentially 300 yards and 3 to 4 touchdowns having those guys in the room. I mean, let's say Ainias would have left, then are we talking something different? Maybe, because, how are they going to get the ball to him a lot? That's what's going to be interesting. So let me know in the comments, folks. Do you think that's going to be something we're going to see play out? Are these guys going to hold Evan Stewart back? And when I say that, I mean that in a good way. Hold him back. I think if all three of these guys are involved and having great seasons for Texas A&M, it's a good thing. I think the Aggies are winning football games. I think we're moving the ball through the air. I think it's a positive for Connor Weigman. I think it's exciting all around. So we'll just have to see how this all pans out with Evan Stewart this year, folks. So let me know in the comments a whole bunch of stuff. Let me know your all's thoughts on the Johnny Manziel doc. Let me know who you think is going to be all SEC for the Aggies this year. And let me know if you think that the talent of this wide receiver room is going to hold back the upside of Evan Stewart's sophomore season. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies, folks. It was another fun week here. This week I had my best show to date numbers-wise, and I just want to say one more time, thank you so much for listening every day. I couldn't do what I do without you all. You make it possible for me to do this show on a day-to-day basis by tuning in and watching and interacting. It really means the world to me to be able to hit that milestone of a great show and bring you all this show every week. So thank you so much for tuning in. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it. I couldn't do this without you all, the listener, the everydayer. I hope you all have an outstanding weekend. If you haven't seen the Johnny Manziel doc, Untold Johnny Football, go watch it right now. Great show. Go watch it. I hope you have a great weekend, and we will see you on Monday.